Wheel of Genre, the show for readers who have stumbled into an antique fever dream and need help finding their way out. Each month we spin the wheel and land on a new genre. Spies, mysteries, horror, romance, SF, it's all on the shelf. And right now we are reading every story in Ann and Jeff VanderMeer's anthology, The Weird, including this one, an excerpt from Alfred Kubin's The Other Side. I'm Zach, and this week I'm really interested in, I guess, the first mile marker in our journey and where we think it's going to go from here.
Long trek. I'm Bob. I'm interested in Kubin as a illustrator, in addition to how that shows up in this story. This is a very interesting story, but I think it's clear that he's a visual artist. It shows up so vividly throughout, and sometimes it feels like he's really just illustrating with words and just showing us a bunch of pictures. And sometimes it's like, well, what does this have to do with the story? It's great, but where are we going? But I thought it was a very unique style.
I 100% agree with you. I think that he is painting with words, and he does this with this really interesting kind of anecdotal style. He'll just give you little glimpses of things. It's almost like looking around at, those like model train parks that you can go to.
It is like that.
where the reason you're there is for the train, but the reason you stay, the reason why you're obsessed is because they've built all of these little characters who, when you look closer, you're like, oh, that man's beating another man with a hammer, or that man's helping another man tie his shoe, or there's all of these little stories. Well, that's how it felt to read this book.
Distinct opposites there. I was thinking, Richard Scarry's Busy World, but all the little critters are soulless and their eyes are like this, tearing each other apart. I was looking, so Alfred Kubin was a very, very famous, or at least in the literary world, a famous illustrator. And so he did illustrations for E.T.A. Hoffman, Balzac, Poe, Dostoevsky. So lots of really and a lot more people too, but really, really famous authors, and he was doing their illustrations. I started looking up some of his illustrations. They are horrifying. They're some of the most horrifying things I've ever seen. And I wonder, the series for kids that was popular maybe 25 years ago, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, I think. I wonder if that artist was influenced by Kubin, because the style is very similar. It's gray, it's bleak, and it's not so much graphic and blood and guts as it is just a composition that really breaks your brain, and it's just so nightmarish. And I feel this story starts to go in that direction. It starts off very lighthearted, very fun, and as we read it, the more we move into it, I see no longer the little guy helping someone tie their shoe. I see the guy hitting his friend with a hammer at the train station.
I like what you were saying about the influence of Alfred Kubin, because whether or not the person who illustrated Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark knew Alfred Kubin's name, I get the sense that his work is so influential just by virtue of being attached to all of these major names, these major hitters in their books, that he might be responsible for just the creation of an aesthetic that to us at this point just seems invisible. This is just how the horrible looks. This is just how the terrible feels. But really, that's just a glimpse inside Alfred Kubin's mind.
Yes. I think that's what people were thinking when he first came out with these illustrations and then this story too. I think people did not know what was going to hit him. He never wrote much, and then he started working with, who was it? I think a friend of Kafka's, and he said, hey, let's just work on this story. And then he turned The Other Side out, this whole novel, and I don't think he wrote much else. And it is very special. It's kind of, well, at least I've never heard anyone talk about it before until Jeff and Ann VanderMeer. I think it's a very special story. But he saw this other artist called Max Klinger, and he had been doing just oil paintings, regular stuff, and then he saw Max Klinger's work and he said, here, a new art was thrown open to me, which offered free play for the imaginative expression of every conceivable world of feeling. So I think you're right. It's a special glimpse into his brain, and the story is really doing the same thing.
Let's talk about the story itself. To me, all right, so first off, what happens? We seem to, it's hard to talk specifics because it is so clearly an excerpt from something longer, but we seem to be inside of a city in which everyone keeps falling asleep. It's like a classic plague tale where there's some mysterious illness has descended upon people, and people are falling asleep and waking up in seemingly random intervals. Eventually, animals and wildlife say, hey, the people are asleep. They start, I guess you could say, colonizing the city. I don't have a better word for the slow encroachment of animals back into the world. And then this leads in its own way to a kind of breakdown in the social order, which finally leads to a material breakdown. The wood starts disintegrating. The concrete starts crumbling. To me, it kind of perfectly straddles the line between images that you would find in dreams and a kind of loose, logical narrative making. Like if the animals come back, then of course the city's going to start composting.
Natural composting. There is it feels, kind of like VanderMeer again with Area X, where Area X is potentially expanding and it's taking over any influence of humans and just kicking it all out. It's either taking their technology and erasing any sign of humans, or it's just growing its own weird monstrous things that look kind of like humans. But there is almost a despair in this story because while all of the people are kind of Richard Scary people, they're plucky. They keep finding different solutions. There's a professor that keeps standing up and explaining, these bugs are good bugs. Those bugs are bad bugs, because they have an insect problem too. But then every time they fix something slips away. So as they have been solving these bug problems, what you said earlier is it starts to decay, starts to mold. They call it the crumbling, and everything is crumbling underneath them. All of their buildings are starting to fall. They have mildew, they have rot everywhere. So no matter what they do, they cannot win. And there's something scary about that in a very weird way, where it's cute and funny, but underneath the cute and funny, it just gets worse and worse and worse. It's like the old David Lynch movie where you see a guy mowing his lawn, Blue Velvet, and it's all nice. You see a great town, and then it just keeps zooming in under the grass, and you see all of the bugs squirming and killing each other. It feels like that, and it's getting there slowly. But the strange thing that I think is truly weird is this, what he says, is the new unclear threat. Because shadows start spreading. There are things moving in the dark. These things that were funny before and inconvenient now are getting, malicious, almost evil. And then we meet a very weird, almost like God character.
I might need your help understanding this whole God thing, because by the end reveal that the God is some alternate form of this character he's calling the American, I was like, wait, who is this God? So I Command F'd my way through the text, and I was like, I don't know if we ever got like a real introduction of who this God is supposed to be. It's very elusive. It's hard to chase down this one.
It is elusive, and it feels like a Donald Barthelme story where this crazy thing happens, this other crazy thing, it's just supposed to get, it's ramping up the tension more and more and more, and it feels like maybe the American was just the American, and then suddenly there was an opportunity to make him this strange devil, this strange god, Patera. It just felt like it's slipping in that direction, almost like it's slipping out of Alfred Kubin's hands. It's strange, though. As the darkness comes, the character, the narrator, despairs more and more and more. And he says, I'm so afraid. I really can't take it anymore. I'm going to lose my mind. I am too fearful now. But then when Patera comes, he says, I called you. And Patera is very frightening, very terrible. We zoom in on his face. His lips twitch. He has a horrible sight in an otherwise inert face. And then he just starts rattling off this weird, almost devilish sermon. He says, can you hear the dead singing? The bright green dead. They disintegrate in their graves easily, painlessly. If you put your hand into their bodies, all you feel are fragments, and the teeth come out so easily. Whoa! It feels like his illustrations, and it's just suddenly bubbling up, taking over the story. What was a fun Barthelme story, a little critter story, now is very evil.
I'm glad you brought up that weird poetry because, well, okay, so much of this story for me felt stylistically rooted in the past. And by that I mean, it it reminded me more of something like Andre Breton's writing or Alfred Jarry's writing, the heavy surrealist bent, where it just feels like someone just reciting their dreams to you. But that poetry, Patera's poetry, that's something that I feel like will carry us through. That's the one element. If I had to pick any element out that I expect to see more of in the future, weird, indecipherable poetry, but it has an air of great meaning and great depth. But the longer you read it, the longer you try to read it and try to understand it, the more elusive its meaning seems.
It's very arresting. It feels like your own dream is coming out of the story trying to talk to you. And it's disconcerting in a way. And he was really, again, he's an illustrator, but I think he's a great writer too. He was pretty unknown as an illustrator until 1903. He had an exhibition in Berlin, and it says that he gained a scandalous reputation, became famous overnight. And then the critics looked at his work and they said, "These works occupy the dark room of the modern soul." And everyone freaked out. He's a strange guy, Kubin.
Well, Kubin is merely the first mile marker on our long, long journey through the weird. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm keeping an eye out. I'm curious what elements of this will carry forward and what elements of this will return later. And we will say, someone has been reading their Kubin.
Yes. They'll look like in great despair and they've lost their mind. Yes.
All right. I'll talk to you later, Bob.
See you on the other side. Talk to you later, Zach.